Senator Cruz of Texas is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Ms. Lynch.
Good afternoon, Senator.
And congratulations on your nomination. Congratulations to your family, who I know are justifiably proud of you for being nominated to this.
Thank you, sir.
You know, I'll note a number of my friends and colleagues who practice law in New York have reached out to me with words of praise for you, describing your tenure as U.S. Attorney there as that of a no-nonsense prosecutor and as a U.S. Attorney who honored and respected the law. And so for that, I congratulate you. You began your remarks by describing how, with new attorneys in your office, you remind them that they take an oath, not to the Attorney General, but to the Constitution. That same thing is true for the Attorney General of the United States. And I have long expressed my very deep concerns with the conduct of the current Attorney General, Eric Holder. The Attorney General has a long and distinguished history, a bipartisan history, of being willing to stand up to the presidents who appointed them. Attorneys General in both parties have demonstrated fidelity to law and to the Constitution, even when it meant telling the president of their own party no. Now, that is never easy to do. But part of what's made the Department of Justice special is that Attorneys General, both Democrat and Republican, have honored that commitment, as you noted to your young lawyers, to the Constitution, not to the president who has appointed me. My single greatest concern with the tenure of Attorney General Eric Holder is that I do not believe he has upheld that tradition. I believe the Department of Justice has behaved more like a partisan operation for the president than an impartial law enforcement agency. And so I want to ask you at the outset the simple question of, if confirmed, how would your tenure as Attorney General differ from that of Eric Holder's?
Well, Senator, I think you have raised an important issue of the role of the Attorney General. As we've discussed, it is an incredibly important cabinet member, but the Attorney General is a cabinet member unlike other cabinet members, in that the obligation of the Attorney General is first and foremost to represent the American people, to protect and defend the Constitution, and to faithfully execute the laws as passed by this body. In interacting with the White House or any agency, if confirmed as Attorney General, I would do so in the manner in which I've conducted myself as United States Attorney, with a full and fair evaluation of every matter brought before me, with a full and fair review of all of the relevant laws, with discussion with career prosecutors, as well as even the most junior people, whom I have found to often have the best insight into matters. And only then will I make a determination as to a step to be taken. Going forward, every Attorney General creates their own path. You've asked how I will be different from Eric Holder. I will be Loretta Lynch. I will be the person that I've always been as I've led my office through 2 terms as United States Attorney, focusing solely on the protection of the people of my district, and if confirmed as Attorney General, on the protection of all of the American people. One thing I do wish to say, Senator, is that with respect to the issues that you raise, I greatly appreciate your sharing them with me, both now and during the discussion that we had in your office. I look forward to more discussions with you and your colleagues, and I want to pledge to you now that I will always listen to your concerns. I will consult with this body where appropriate, because there's a great collective wisdom here and experience, both prosecutorial and legal. And I look forward to having a dialogue with you and, frankly, crafting a positive relationship, not just with this committee, but with Congress.
Well, Ms. Lynch, I thank you for that. That commitment is welcome and would mark a sharp break from the practices of the current Department of Justice. One of the frustrations of a number of members of this committee is that the Department has not been responsive to this committee's requests, and indeed, were that to change, that would be highly welcome. Let me focus on one, and if time allows, 2 specific areas where I believe the Department has gone with partisan politics instead of upholding the law. And let's start with immigration, which has been a topic of much discussion already.
Thank you.
You mentioned in your opening statement that you had now taken the opportunity to review carefully the OLC opinion on the President's executive amnesty. Do you agree with the legal analysis in the OLC opinion?
Senator, I have had occasion to review the OLC opinion that dealt with the Department of Homeland Security's request for a legal framework in how to prioritize removal of certain undocumented immigrants, or really all the undocumented immigrants, under their jurisdiction. I did not see a grant of amnesty there or a pathway to citizenship. Certainly, as I reviewed the opinion, as well as the letters from some scholars who wrote in support of it, it seemed to be a way to look for the legal framework based upon case law, precedent, prior action of Congress, as well as the discretionary authority of the Department of Homeland Security to prioritize this removal, and certainly placing those most dangerous of the undocumented immigrants at the top of that list seemed to me to be a very reasonable exercise. Certainly, I would hope that the protection of those communities where undocumented immigrants involved in, for example, violent crime, gang activity, terrorism, would be at the top of the list.
Ms. Lynch, you said now and before in your opening statement that you found the legal analysis reasonable. OLC operates in the place of the Attorney General of the United States, and an OLC opinion operates as the legal judgment of the Attorney General as the chief legal officer for the United States. And so my question is quite simply, do you agree with the legal analysis in that memorandum? Would it have been your legal analysis had you been asked the same question?
Well, Senator, I certainly am not able to say at this point if my legal analysis would have taken the same pathway and the same steps, because I have not reviewed all of the cases and reviewed all of the memorandum that I'm sure went into that. But what I can say is that, again, as the opinion seeks to talk about the exercise of executive discretion, it seemed to be looking at precedent, actions of Congress, as well as the immigration laws to see if there was a legal framework for the requested actions. And what I noted was that for some of the actions, the Office of Legal Counsel found that there was a legal framework for some of the actions that the Department of Homeland Security wanted to set in place. But for some of the requested actions, the Office of Legal Counsel found that there was not the appropriate legal framework for some of those actions, and instead, in my understanding, is advised the Department of Homeland Security that they should not proceed along certain ways. And my understanding is that that advice was taken. So I do believe that the Office of Legal Counsel has the important obligation to look at the law, look at the facts, look at the action that is being brought before it, and say where there is an appropriate legal framework as well as where there is not an appropriate legal framework.
Ms. Lynch, I would note that I've twice asked you if you agree with the analysis, and you are a very talented lawyer, and so I suspect it is not an accident that twice you have not answered that question. You have described what OLC did but have not given a simple answer. Do you agree with that analysis or not?
Senator, I've told you that I did find the analysis to be reasonable. I did find it to recognize the issues, and it did seem to provide a reasonable basis.
Well, in 2011, before the last election, President Obama said, quote, "With respect to the notion that I can just suspend deportations through executive order, that's just not the case, because there are laws on the books that Congress has passed." Now, do you agree with what President Obama said in 2011?
Senator, I don't know what legal opinion he was relying on at the time. Certainly the subsequent legal opinion talks about the temporary deferral of deportation in a way that does provide a legal framework for it. But I don't know if the President was speaking of this exact same issue or not. I simply couldn't provide a legal opinion about the President's comments at this time.
Now, the executive action, in my view, the OLC opinion has no legal basis whatsoever. It hinges upon the notion of prosecutorial discretion, and you rightly described how any prosecutor will prioritize some cases over others, for example, focusing on more violent criminals. In your office as U.S. Attorney, you certainly exercise prosecutorial discretion. Was it your practice for any category of crimes to suggest to those who may have violated the criminal laws that they can come into your office and seek a written authorization exonerating them of their past crimes and authorizing them to continue carrying out crimes for a large categorical group of offenders?
Senator, we would not have that type of direct dealing with offenders. They would come to our attention as part of an investigation or part of an issue where they would already be under suspicion of some sort of wrongdoing. So we would not have that type of discussion with someone who might be represented or might have other rights. We would not have that type of discussion with someone.
So that's not anything you ever did?
Yeah.
No, we do have priorities within my office. We do have guidelines within my office. Those are shared with our law enforcement colleagues. We also share them with many of our state and local colleagues as we discuss where to best place certain types of cases.
Senator,
thank you very much, and we will continue
thank you,
later
Senator
on.
Cruz. Senator Franken now.